health of humanity. What can be done to stop them and save the future of civilization? Find out only on Hard News.
Hello, welcome. Hey, Lost is here. Everyone, go check out Lost channel on the Twitch. I wanted to start by saying the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion complete. What are the environmental risks? Just a quick little, how do you do here?
Well, the price at the pump for British Columbians, especially in Vancouver, where we pay the highest gas prices, will that come down because of this pipeline?
Nope. It's all for export. It's all got to be refined at special refineries that are basically in California and the Gulf Coast, and there's maybe one in China that can handle this heavy oil.
So I'm not even getting that back in gas
Zero benefit,
savings?
baby. Zero benefit. There's only one thing that really affects gas prices.
Yeah.
The proximity to a holiday weekend. Then miraculously, the market invisibly decides that they got to go through the roof. None of this will help gas prices. None of this will help individuals, consumers, families. It is just a gift to the most profitable industry, as Bill McKibben says, in the history of money. Thank you, Trudeau Liberal government. Thank you, Harper decade before. We are in it now.
So yeah, if you didn't know, the idea of these pipelines, in theory, they sound better because it's going to be a little bit more, let's say, less impactful on the environment, less production of CO2 to have, pipelines pouring precious, beautiful bitumen from one location to another. And you'd think the price of gas is going to go down locally as a result of building these pipelines. A lot of indigenous communities have said, no, please do not build these and don't build them through our land because they can be devastating ecologically, especially if they explode. And they have a tendency to do that. But the idea is that you should be able to get cheaper gas as a result of this. Turns out, according to Avi Lewis and multiple people who are looking at this, that won't change the price of it because it has to be refined now. So it's going to be exported from there to somewhere else, probably California or some refinery factories in China, where it'll be turned into usable petroleum, delicious sweet petroleum, and then shipped back, obviously, at a cost, and then delivered to you. And then yes, usually if you want to look at a pattern of when gas prices will go up significantly and then go back down, long weekends are a good indicator of that as well, which it may surprise you, but it makes a lot of sense. So there was some police brutality over the weekend, starting on Thursday, I believe, on students. There was police attacking Jewish students, police attacking Muslim students, police attacking agnostic students, police attacking atheist students. A whole bunch of kids were attacked, but not in America. No, not this time. This took place in Alberta, and things escalated quite aggressively.
Pro-Palestinian encampment overnight on the University of Calgary's campus. Police asked protesters to leave and then moved in to clear out the remaining demonstrators. Police forced protesters back using shields and flashbangs. Calgary Police Services says no injuries have been reported. Let's turn once again to CBC's Linda Ward, who's been covering this story for us. Linda, take us through.
Well, that's not entirely true, actually. There's been multiple injuries reported, but I guess this is from a couple days ago. The scenes, I'll show you some of the other angles and some of the other footage are pretty gnarly, especially considering like the story and the spin that's been going on this already. We've heard similar things to what you saw in New York with Mayor Eric Adams, where it's like, hey, they discovered a bunch of objects. Apparently the students had some needles. Yes, needles. What were they going to use with those needles? Perhaps either putting goofballs into their bodies or injecting other people with other substances. We're not entirely sure. There was some picks as well as some spikes, what they could be used for, stabbing vampires, perhaps. I could be describing camping equipment and a overdose prevention kit, an naloxone kit, if you will, which it may have been a naloxone kit and camping equipment, but it sounds much scarier when you say needles, and spikes. Needles and spikes, when you hear that, I'm like, oh, damn, yeah, those kids, they meant business.
What happened last night?
Yeah, multiple arrests last night, Natasha, at the University of Calgary campus. The scene you just saw playing out around 11 o'clock, but it started earlier in the day. Now, police say that they were called in by the University of Calgary around 6:30 p.m. local time. Protesters were setting up tents on the south lawn of McEwen Hall. Police estimate about 150 people had set up in that space. And security at the university says that those protesters were asked to take their tents down and leave, but they refused, at which point they were told by campus security that they were trespassing, and they still didn't leave. Then police were called in. Now, Calgary.
And then police were called in. University of Alberta encampment before versus after.
Please, it doesn't need to be like this. Please don't hurt my students. Please don't hurt my students. Please don't hurt my students. It doesn't need to be like this. This is a beautiful gathering of community. This is what learning, what an education, what it is. We don't need to do this. We can put our guns, our weapons down and stop violence, stop occupation.
Yeah, no inches, right? Naturally. Scroll down. This video was made by brilliant, kind, and totally badass students of Treaty 6. They've already had a lasting impact around the world, despite the brutal fascists who administer this genocidal university. Absolute bonkers statement by the University of Alberta. The encampment, when the tents were dismantled yesterday morning, we found potential weapons including hammers, axes, and screwdrivers along with a box of needles. There's no question that the encampment posed a serious and imminent risk of potential violence and injury to university community members and members of the public. Again, the box of needles was a naloxone kit, and the hammers, axes, and screwdrivers were part of camping gear and setup. It's not, I guess, as wild as the statement that I saw, I guess, from New York, where they're saying that the bike locks themselves were like intentional chains. I guess this one you could point a little bit. Luckily, those with us as degrees from the University of Alberta weren't taught by whoever it was who drafted this deranged newspeak. Indeed, we were taught by scholars who trained us to see through it and not let ourselves be gaslit. It's too bad the university's administration underestimates that. Absent strong evidence of serious imminent threats to the activities on the university when you call in that many officers, I don't understand thinking that it imagines the risk to that public safety of students is somehow less important than the risks they posed. This is from Independent Jewish Voices, the Edmonton chapter, who were one of the core organizers of the encampment. Alberta University encampment removal likely violated protesters' constitutional rights, the legal experts say. It looks like they were engaged in a kind of mass violation. Oh man, come on. Can I scroll through it? Okay. It looks like we're engaged in a kind of mass violation of protesters' constitutional rights. Pro-Palestine encampments calling for the University of Calgary and University of Alberta to divest themselves from any Israeli-linked investments, along with other requests, were swiftly dismantled on Thursday nights and Saturday morning. One of the UC campus, erected early Thursday morning, was taken down later by the night by Calgary police, with authorities using non-lethal munitions, including tear gas and flashbangs, to disperse demonstrators. 5 people were arrested, CPS Chief Mark Newfield said. Oh yeah, and of course Rebel News was there. So Rebel News is trying to make this whole thing out like in America, same like, you know, pitch. Basically, all the students have been weaponized and radicalized by Hamas. So they're basically now Hamas fighters and Hamas chapters in Canada. In the same way they're trying to spin that in, like, you know, there's Hamas students that are being activated in the United States and stuff like that, which again, yeah, people can see with their eyes. This whole thing is like, the ability to lie and to try and mass manipulate the public through using, what is usually used to be called, it was called mainstream media for a reason, right? It was mainstream. It was like one of the primary ways in which we ingested information on a mass scale, and that would usually be from, first radio, then the television that's moved on. But once it started reaching the internet and we had the ability to mass proliferate our own information, well, yes, we've been given the ability to also see with our own eyes what's actually happening, and in so connecting the entire planet. Gen Zers, kids, and everyone, by the way, is capable of seeing the world and seeing and feeling connected to it, even though we're not literally there in proximity. Like, if you start to understand that we're human beings, we're all humans, you start to feel that people who are suffering in other parts of the world, whether you watch it happen in the Congo or you're watching, what is taking place in Darfur, and you see the footage of it, you really start to empathize with people and you feel connected to them. And as you see the daily footage of bombs and carnage and kids exploding and stuff like that, you start to feel very, very personally responsible, because in a way you are somewhat, if you are a taxpayer to, the United States or Canadian or a lot of countries in the West governments who will in turn be providing vast amounts of aid or military equipment to Israel. And so that's why a lot of people are starting, they're feeling like they're being radicalized by some kind of insidious AI that's coming from China. It's more just the realities of how the world operates, and getting exposed to that very rapidly is, yes, radicalizing younger generations at a very rapid pace, the likes of which I've never seen in my lifetime. And of course, it just makes sense. They're explaining it in very plain terms. Have you seen that viral video by that younger blonde woman who's like pointing multiple times at her door or something, and she's like, do you know why Gen Z is getting as active and angry as it is that we see it. I see it every single day. I can see with my own eyes. I see all the carnage and the death and the destruction, and I feel personally responsible, and I feel connected to these people because they are my brothers and sisters. And I'm not Palestinian. I'm a white girl from Atlanta, and like, I'm just saying, I feel connected to these people because we're all fucking human beings, and I feel like we're murdering people, and I'm paying for it partially. Part of my taxes will pay for this, or my tuition at my school or stuff like that, and I don't want to be a part of this anymore. You're sold this idea every single day. She's like, I used to sing the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. I didn't know what it meant, but I'm one of those people who had to do it, and I've been doing it for so long. But you can see in her eyes, and in multiple other people, like, just go talk to the people at the encampments. They're not there maliciously. They're not there because it's like, oh yes, I deeply want to start this like global intifada on the behalf of Hamas and Hezbollah who have radicalized me. They're very clear and concise in what they're asking for and what they're talking about, and their understanding of the world. Very intelligent. Yeah, I know it's underestimated, but the response, of course, is crack them skulls. I gotta say, Rebel News, I know you're trying to make it look like the police are badass. This is having the opposite effect for me. I think you could do this r/unintentional propaganda, Again, look at some of the weaponry too. Like the stuff that like people were like, "Oh yes, America, so heavily armed." Not like in Canada, not like in peaceful, progressive, communist Canada, where they'll leave the students alone. And no, I was like, they're ready to do some damage. Yeah, I like that. This is supposed to make the cops look cool. It makes them look ridiculous. Why are you so heavily armed? These are students and faculty, I might add, by the way. Faculty are amongst the injured in Alberta. I'm sorry, but if there's an old woman double flipping you off, she's probably on the right side of history here. Brave ass cops going after fucking double flip off grandma. Yeah, nah. Yeah, I'm sorry, Rebel. This just makes the cops look deranged. Honestly, all of this. I'm just like, what? This is so much excessive force for a bunch of students who are literally camping peacefully. I know that they found some items there that are a little bit untrustworthy. Axes, tent, pegs, stakes, needles. Yes, even needles. Yes, the protesters, according to both the Treaty 6 rightful land owners that include the Métis people, not my band specifically, though. I'm part of the BC Métis Federation, not the Alberta ones. But yeah, that they've given the students permission to be on their lands. It's once again, it's the same situation that you're finding happening in the United States over and over again here. Wow. For like,
for Rebel News, we're here at the University.
Oh my God, sir, you need a soul.
You have to leave. It's complicated. This is but not tonight. Because if everyone's been informed that they can be arrested for trespassing tonight, if everyone leaves, I can't arrest them. Okay. And that is on you.
I guess Rebel News doesn't understand the irony. Oh yeah, of course. Well, I mean, Rebel News is basically just like, you know, the boot delivered into your home so you can enjoy it. Yes, should you want a little bit of boot, just sweet boot to brush up against, just, you know, rub your face on while you're just sitting at home wondering how good the boot's doing.
Right now, I've been clear what's about to happen. So
So here they're committing the crime, I guess, of singing, which is one of the worst things you can do.
Enough time to move off the university. Thank you for your understanding.
And then things accelerated pretty quickly. It's also, it's so fucking expensive, you know, to have all this be done. It's like, again, how are we protecting the peace? Keeping students safe by arresting them, detaining them, zap strapping them, tackling them, gassing them. So they dispersed. The U of A has released a second statement from Bill Flanagan regarding the encampment, saying 17 wooded pallets were found within 150 meters of the camp, as well as potential weapons, including hammers, axes, screwdrivers, and a box of needles. Again, that was a naloxone kit, and that was camping equipment and set up for tents. And the one thing, the 17 wooden pallets, well, that one is the one that you saw the cops, you know, smashing or shutting down. I don't know if the 17 wooden pallets count as vast weaponry, though, or an arsenal. I think it was just a defensive line they tried to build, but the police, they smashed it down pretty fast. So Seinfeld, you may know, is the guy who's touring around talking about how you can't make movies anymore because of commies. Fucking lefties have shut down the ability to be funny. They took the funny away by making, you know, all these PC culture safe films. It's funny that he did that as kind of a preamble right before releasing what is being reviewed as like the most unfunny film of the decade. So he made this terrible movie that just absolutely bombs, one of the worst, like, you know, big title releases in Netflix history. And then all of a sudden, you know, if you were part of that project, if you're like someone who's cool, like Bill Burr, for example, or sorry, Bill Burr, you're in that movie, and then that really sucks, you know. Or if you're John Hamm, and you got to be in that movie, and then look over, and then there's Seinfeld going on all these movies being like, well, yes, it's not our fault that this movie sucks, it's communism. Yeah, the left took that away. Well, he was also chosen as a commencement speaker at Duke University, and so here's the speech, and then all the students decided, well, many of them decided to walk out and protest.
Jerry is also serving as our commencement speaker today. What's the big deal about our commencement speaker? Jerry's
So, Jerry Seinfeld was chosen as a commencement speaker at Duke University. Seinfeld is an American Jewish person who, as far as I know, doesn't sit on Israel's war cabinet, serve in the IDF, or have absolutely anything to do with the war between Israel and Hamas, so why would the students walk out? And then Rafael Shumanov was very quick to point out, Jerry Seinfeld was not only offered has not only offered unconditional support for Israel's attacks on Gaza, his wife not only donated to create a counter-protest against the ceasefire, but they visited illegal West Bank settlements for a, quote, fantasy camp, romanticizing killing Palestinians as a family adventure. And here's some photos, just in case anyone thinks that's an exaggeration. Another sign at a university commencement at North Carolina. Anyone who does not leave or put down signs when asked will be removed and arrested. Thank you for your cooperation, which is not at all dystopian. And that brings us to Lindsey Graham. An E? No. You might remember Lindsey Graham was one of the fools who decided it was appropriate when discussing this topic to say that we're in the middle of a holy war, which is about one of the most horrifying things that a major U.S. politician could probably say out loud. And then everyone was like, "That's fucked." Even people on the right, even Republicans were kind of like, "Yeah, that's fucked. Don't do that." So now he's encouraging us to think about Hiroshima and Nagasaki when imagining appropriate solutions to Gaza, aka Glassum.
So when we were faced with destruction as a nation, after Pearl Harbor, fighting the Germans and the Japanese, we decided to end the war by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki with nuclear weapons. That was the right decision. Give Israel the bombs they need to end the war they can't afford to lose, and work with them to minimize casualties. Well, can I say this?
You can cut him off. You have that power. You have the ability to cut his mic. You can cut his mic at any time you wanted there, and then be like, yes. So what you're discussing, sir, is basically genocidal, apocalyptic style stuff. Yeah. I have a feeling that you want to accelerate the end of humanity for some kind of, I don't know, hopefully you get raptured up, you get to be in the right bosom of God, and you're hoping that that bosom will be plentiful and feed you heartily. And that's basically, I think, what you're hoping for here. That's it. That's best case scenario for Lindsey Graham, right? I guess, like, if you want to be this person who believes in the rapture and you want to believe that the second coming of Jesus is imminent, that could also have something to do with your own life. I might recommend cleaning up your room. I might recommend looking within and perhaps not trying to doom humanity in the process just because you can't sort shit out, right? Like, you could work on self-reflection, work on yourself, rather than wanting us all to go to heaven. Well, certain people, not everyone, but most people won't go to heaven. But some people get to go to heaven, get that bosom, and then, you think if you're on the right hand of God, everything's going to be okay. Again, it just sucks because, like, none of them are getting into the kingdom of heaven. None of them are following the rules, right? Are these multiple linens of different material? I believe so. I believe that's 3 different linens of different material, most likely. That right there, that's a cardinal sin. I mean, hey, you're not getting into heaven, sir.
Why is it okay for America to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end their existential threat war? Why was it okay for us to do that? I thought it was okay. To Israel, do whatever you have to do.
Philip Schwartz, thank you so much for the $5 dono. Sorry I missed it earlier. Police brutality odd. It's not like they protect property in the system instead of caring about actual justice. This is true. And again, in terms of radicalization of younger generations, it's happening at a faster rate than any lefty could possibly hope to achieve on their advocacy on the internet. I could sit here all day, being like, have you read Angela Davis? Have you read Prison Abolition? Have you read The Theory yet, everybody? And then when kids see it with their own eyes, like firsthand, when they're like, hey, why is there so many police that are heavily armed coming after us, the students, for being on the right side of history, for protesting injustice? That's weird. They said they're here because we're trespassing. Apparently we're on private property on the school that we pay tuition to. Yeah. This is incredibly scary and dangerous and horrifying. And yeah, I know it's Lindsey Graham and like, oh, your heavens to Murgatroyd, he'll say anything. And that's true. He will say anything. But at the same time, it's still profoundly fucked. And we should probably be very, very cautious about platforming this kind of radicalized figures. And if you're going to, well, be prepared to cut him off. Just have a little button ready there, the Graham button, and you can just push it, cuts his mic off, and then you can be like, well, I'm not going to allow him to speak at this moment because he's clearly lost his mind, and so I'm going to have to provide a little bit of commentary here. If we were to try and drop a nuclear bomb on Gaza, and there was a reciprocal nuclear bomb, perhaps launched by another country, or if we even entered a nuclear war where countries were firing nuclear bombs at one another, we would probably have mutually assured destruction, as in the entirety of the planet isn't really prepared to survive a massive nuclear war. It's a bad thing. No nukes should be used in warfare, period. And it's it's not great that the United States did it, and I wouldn't use it as a justification to try and again kill a civilian population of half children, which is also really fucked up, and amongst everything else. And now for more dancing. I know some of you are in Europe watching me right now. If you're in Europe and you're watching me, and hey, if you're watching me on the YouTubes, hit the thumbs up button because it helps out the stream apparently. Bumps up the algorithm. If you're on Twitch and you have Prime connected, you can subscribe for free. And also, you probably are excited about Eurovision. I boycotted. I'm all ooh today. I boycotted it. I did. I'm proud of myself. I didn't watch Eurovision. Yes, it's not my first boycott. In fact, it continues a long line of always not watching Eurovision. But for Europeans, I know it is a massive, massive event, and it's fun. And hey, who does not love singing and dancing? I'm not actually here just to shit all over Eurovision. I like singing. I like dancing. I like pageantry, and I also like gay shit. It's can be very pro LGBTQ plus. I heard the winner of this year's contest was non-binary, the first non-binary winner. These are all neat things. But yes, they should not have allowed Israel to participate. There are bigger picture items on the menu right now, and one of those is, of course, the ongoing genocide of Palestinians, of which a lot of us feel personally some responsibility because our countries, in one way or another, are most likely aiding Israel, as are a lot of the corporations that operate both within our countries and within parts sometimes of the West Bank. And that's why there are movements like boycott, divest, of which certainly people should be looking into, participating in, and joining in on the whole, let's get on the right side of history stuff. So there was protesters, there was booing of the Israeli competition and contestant. I still don't know what it is. Eurovision is a musical competition where all the countries in Europe participate, and some countries, I guess not 100% located within Europe, also participate. But it's a musical competition where countries participate, and it's fun because it's a whole bunch of different songs, usually very electronic and opera themed. They have to be about the spectacle, grandeur. You're not going to win usually if you're in there and you're just like, my name is Lance and I'm here to say Europe, yay. That probably won't win as much as like some fantastical, like, whoa. Think space rock opera, EDM, mixed in with a little bit of Euro trash and then sprinkle with some gay, and the whole thing probably becomes quite the spectacle, and obviously hugely popular in Europe. It's one of those things that's just like so fantastically popular in one section, one real continent essentially of the world, and then the rest of the world is kind of ignoring it on for the most part. At least in the West. I don't know if it's a huge thing in South and Central America. I don't know if it's a massive thing in Africa. I don't know if people in lots of parts of Asia are huge on it as well, watching it. I don't know. I can't say. It gave us ABBA. Okay, well, I mean, ABBA's good. ABBA's great. Again, I'm not here to shit on the whole idea of there being a massive music festival that people participate in. But this year, it was pretty clear and concise. Everyone was like, I don't think you should allow Israel to participate. That doesn't seem really right, considering they're currently, under trial for potential genocide. And that's like pretty fucked up. And I think a lot of the world is rightfully disgusted at what's happening. And no matter how much we have a lot of Western powers consistently try and push the same narrative on us that this is in the interests of the West somehow. This is about Western national security as much as it is about Israeli national security, when really everyone can see what's happening with their own eyes. It's like, this is just really destabilizing the region, if not the world. It's a terrible thing, actually. And we're supposed to be, we're supposed to put measures in place not to let this shit happen, right? We recognize that this is the highest crime that humanity can commit upon itself, and we're witnessing it, and we're all horrified by that, and then we're trying to put an end to it. So it just seems in really, really fucking poor taste to allow this to take place, especially in the vein of like entertainment, in the like, let's have a fun competition where we sing songs to each other, and songs where they represent our countries, and one of those countries is effectively genociding another country that isn't even fully recognized, right? There is no Palestinian competitor in this contest. And then this is on the heels of the UN just recently voting, where the United States, of course, is voting against the idea of recognizing Palestinian as a member state, and Canada abstaining. Cowardly Canada to the bitter end.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
By the way, you might not notice Greta as someone who's the darling child of the liberals anymore. You don't see her shaking hands with like Trudeau or being invited to the Biden White House anymore, or stuff like that, because she might say something that you're not able to censor on live television quite as quickly, because Greta has grown up, and she's talking about a lot more issues than simply climate change. She's recognized how these issues are interconnected, and now she speaks out against the military-industrial complex, capitalism, the American empire, that kind of stuff. So she's no longer the darling child of a lot of the liberals who enjoyed being friends with her, because back then it was just like, well, this is like a young quirky kid who's interesting and really wants to save the world, and her heart's in the right place, and we love her, and then she's just there saying about how we need to save the planet, and that's a nice, safe kind of like commercial, very brandable kind of message, one in which everyone can kind of get behind, and it's not too offensive, in any way, shape, or form. But as soon as you start speaking out against, like, say, the U.S. military and how much they are carbon emitters and polluters, and how many military bases there are globally, start talking about that kind of stuff. Ooh, no, yeah. And if you start talking about solidarity with, say, liberation movements globally, and how we need to end apartheid, for example, it doesn't matter where it takes place. If it's taking place in Palestine on the behalf of Israel, or if it's taking place, in South Africa, doesn't matter where it's taking place, we should be opposing that. These aren't commercially sound messages anymore.
A genocide! This is a genocide! This is a genocide!
He also bodied Andrew Tate so hard he got arrested. I know that's not how it happened, but that's my headcanon. Exactly. We'll just choose to believe it. All right. We can let history be whatever we want it to be. Apparently. I think that's all.
This year's Eurovision Song Contest is being held in Malmö, Sweden. Unfortunately for Israel's representative in the competition, it also happens to be one of the most left-wing cities on Earth. Which is why during Edan Golan's performance of her song Hurricane in the show's dress rehearsal on Wednesday, this happened. If you weren't clear about that noise, that was booze, okay? That wasn't well received. As Golan left the stage, there were calls of free Palestine and from the river to the sea. Now, Malmö has been, and by the way, that is how you pronounce it, has been the site of several large-scale pro-Palestine
That's funny because I guess I've been mispronouncing it for a while. I keep saying Malmo.
protests
But it's Malmö.
in the run-up to Saturday's Eurovision. That's after widespread calls for Israel to be booted from the contest over the country's war on Gaza. But Eurovision itself appears to have taken a stance on Palestine. Bambi Thug is Ireland's entry in the competition. They explained to RT Radio 1 why they had to remove a message written on their body as part of their stage makeup.
Talk to me a little bit about the Ohm writing on your face. What happened there?
Yeah, so I mean, I was devastated that I had to take it off, but I wasn't going to be allowed on stage if I hadn't. And unfortunately, you know, there's a bigger picture here. I have to do the performance to be able to make any impact anywhere.
Yeah. And what did it say?
Originally, it said Saoirse and Palestine, and it said ceasefire.
Okay, right.
So I had to change it to Crown the Witch.
I would be very reluctant to be heavily critical of individual artists because I feel like the broadcasters should have stepped in a long time ago, particularly Ireland, when it shows so much solidarity with Palestine. Anyway, we're an outlier in Europe anyway. Our national broadcaster here are weak. They have many internal problems. They largely report IDF talking points.
But like, doesn't that say everything right there? Because it's like, that was too much. That was the message that they needed to be censored. That was like considered to be like, oh no, we can't put that on television. You can't say free Palestine. It doesn't matter what language it is. You know, that message alone is controversial. But you can have someone from Israel not only participate in the competition, but basically sing a song about whatever they wanted to, essentially. But if you were to put that message on your face and perform, that was too political.
So there's a massive difference between the media and the political class in Ireland and the people on the street. Here, if we had a stronger broadcaster, I think we could have easily pulled out of the competition. It would have been shocking and whatnot. But at the end of the day, like, it's a singing competition, and they've included a country in the singing competition from the Middle East, by the way, that's on trial right now for genocide. I think it's absurd. It's almost absurdly humorous that they're in there at all. But what I would say about the artists, the broadcasters didn't step in, and then you've got an opportunity, the English entry, or the British entry, sorry, and the Irish entry, I'm thinking of specifically, you do.
You see Dave Rubin's Twitter? Oh yeah. I guess you're not watching it on the YouTubes, because that's actually the thumbnail for the YouTube. Is I censored it. I blurred out the naughty bits. But yeah, the high marketplace of ideas featuring Dave Rubin. You know what's wild about his horrifying like rape joke? It's not even original. He stole Sargon of Akkad's rape joke, which, wow, like you couldn't even come up with your own horrifying, like, terrible joke. You had to steal another fucking far right fucking comedian in quotation marks, joke in quotation marks. Wow, all right, Dave Rubin, fucking failed comedian to the bitter end.
You have an opportunity to make a stand yourself. I mean, nobody's going to really force you to sing, I don't think. And I feel like writing messages on your face and wearing keffiyehs and all that kind of stuff, it's almost a little bit insulting, because certainly the pro-Palestine movements here in Ireland, and I know around the world, they've been quite clear.
Apparently the Israeli broadcaster misgendered the non-binary performers during the coverage of Eurovision. That sucks. But I was told that Israel is like the beacon for LGBTQ plus rights in the Middle East. That's what I'm always told. They're like, Lance, come on. They would kill you in Palestine if you were there for being bi. You're not allowed to be. You would be killed. That's just it. So you can't be on that side of history, which is an odd thing to say, because I'm like, you know what? You know, it's probably killing LGBTQ plus people. And Palestine is the bombs that Israel's dropping on them. That's probably killing them. Yeah.
You need to listen to Palestinians, and Palestinians are quite clear that any institution whatsoever, like the Eurovision, that's attempting to kind of overlook the genocide and create a distraction from it and try to rehabilitate the genociders' image, if you will, they are asking us to boycott. So don't cross the picket line, even if you're going to make some facile gesture when you do so. I think, you know, even the people, and I could be way off here, but even the people in the stadium booing and hissing and whatnot, why not just boycott? Just boycott the event, as Palestinians have asked us to do.
Yeah, I'm torn on this one. I think, yeah, honestly, in the first place, had I known or found out that there was this music competition that was actually going to allow Israel to compete and ban any kind of Palestinian flags or messaging, yeah, I would have been like, fuck that noise. I don't want any part of this. But if I was already going to it, it's better to have that booing sequence. That looks good. I mean, every video and clip I've seen where it's like hashtag Eurovision, I've seen someone posting or uploading that video where it's just a stadium of people booing, that singer. And also, in addition to that, chanting and screaming out Free Palestine. That's also optically, that looks nice. But yeah, I understand. There's going to be people on both sides who are probably most likely going to be like, you should have just boycotted it. You shouldn't have gone, period. Shame on you.
And I think the idea of, I know people have said, look,
the cost for tickets ain't cheap. Yeah, well, like that. Let's be real. I probably couldn't afford to go to Eurovision in the first place. How much are Eurovision tickets? Let's see. Eurovision tickets. €13 for some, all the way up to €355 for others. Wait, how do you get the €13 ticket? Do you have to stand outside for that one? Is that a ticket to like a public screening of an outdoor? Like, I feel that's probably it. Oh, these are all in kroners. I don't know what the conversion is for kroners, but so the July rehearsal. But for the actual performance, so that's 860 kroner is the starting thing. 860 kroner. Hold on, 860 kroner to Canadian. $108 is the starting ticket. That's expensive. That's like the very baseline. That's probably nosebleeds high up. And then what's the 3,795 kroner? All right, 3,795 kroner. Let's see that. 478, so basically 500 Canadian. Oh man, it's like 400 US. That's expensive. Fucking pricey ass tickets. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I would have been going in the first place, both because I don't actually watch Eurovision at all, but, for people who would have been going. I quickly want to, point attention to failed comedian. This, if you haven't seen it, like I said, it ain't cheap. Yeah, you're not getting lost. This, if you haven't seen it, everybody, is comedian Dave Rubin, aka host of the Rubin Report. Again, making this horrifying, what you would consider joke, right? He's going to try and fall back because a lot of people got upset about this, including Eve Barlow. She popped up in the replies saying, well, I know you're like, trying to stand up for Israel or whatever. Dave, this is pretty misogynistic and fucked up for you to say. A lot of people actually were kind of a little taken aback because, again, Dave Rubin, he's not a comedian, not really an entertainer, not much of anything, actually. He doesn't have any discernible talent. So much like, the Libs of TikToks or the Matt Walshes or all those other people who get more and more horrible as they go along because, again, they can't really do anything. He can't really do impressions or voices or do writing or do delivery, and he's not pleasant to speak to, and other people don't like him. Like, Dave Rubin really has got to be one of the most unlikable characters on the right, and just everyone knows too that he's just like a grifter and like the biggest pick-me ever, just like, oh yes, please for the love of God. And even if people shame him and they're like, hey, we're not gonna ever let you come to our birthday parties, or you can't come and bring your gay husband to our party because we don't want our party to be gay, we're not gonna go to your party because we know it'll be too gay, shit, like being told to his face by like Ben Shapiro, supposed to be his friend. Like, that's the best case scenario. It's like you can be a pick-me and you get to be in this little, like, media circuit, and PragerU will pay your bills, and you can have, like, some riches, you'll be allowed to have like a certain amount of quality of life for sure. You'll have your mansion, don't worry, Dave, you get all that kind of stuff, but you are going to be surrounded by people who like just fundamentally hate you and don't want you to exist and think of you as disgusting. And like, yeah, it doesn't matter if it's Ben Shapiro. Who else? That dude from The Blaze, Glenn Black, Glenn Black, basically. Ruben's like talking to him about his kids, and then Blair is like, hey, by the way, like, you're still an abomination and you're still sinful. And much like how I forgive the alcoholic for being an alcoholic, I too must find in my heart ways to forgive you. But it's truly an abomination what you are, and you've committed and defiled God's image by, getting a surrogate and all that kind of stuff. So I just want you to know that, again, you will burn in the fiery pits of hell. You're disgusting, and I'm absolutely revolted by your presence. And kneel before me, please. And then, yeah, of course, whatever you want, master. Yeah, what do I have to do or say? And that's basically, it up until this point. So yeah, that's why you'll see little things like this pop out. What else is wild about this one, though, is that this again is a stolen joke, but he took it from Sargon of Akkad, which is, again, what Sargon of Akkad, I think, is most known for. And he dropped it and then dropped it again when he was being asked as a political candidate for UKIP or whatever. It's like, did you make this, statement about a female politician? And then he doubled down on it because it's just the funniest joke in the world. And so, yeah, Ruben thought he'd dust that one off, steal it, joke thief, and then repackage it. Just a little bit of racism in there, but it's already got all the misogyny it needs. So Ruben's ready to go. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about why land back's awesome. And this one happens to involve Kristi Noem. If you didn't know, Kristi Noem released a book, and the book was supposed to show how amazing, down to earth, and good old traditional values she is. Farm girl. She's been through some tough times, including puppy murder. She has murdered puppies, and she's proud to talk about it. Shot puppies in the face, and fucked up things that most people wouldn't reveal, maybe even to a psychiatrist, not without maybe some ketamine therapy or something like that going on. But instead, Kristi Noem thought it would be a good idea to throw it into the book about murdering the puppies, and a lot of fucked up stuff in that book. Actually, a lot of really twisted and strange things. A lot of people are like, just why, and on what element of God's green earth made you think that any of this was acceptable to try and put out there for people to consume? But anyways, days after Sistan Wapton Oyate banned South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem from setting foot on tribal land, a 6 SIOUX tribe joined the banishment of the Trump-loving, puppy-killing Republican. The Yankton tribe voted Friday to bar Noem from their lands, a small swath of about 57 square miles in southeastern South Dakota. It's a meager addition, but since Noem has already been barred from a whopping 16% of territory within South Dakota state lines, the places in her own state she's allowed to go are dwindling. This is one of the best points I could possibly make for land back, because again, the land title clearly states that Indigenous people in multiple areas of North America have proper rights to this land, and they should be the stewards of the land, and they will be better stewards of the land, I'd contend, most likely than the very corporate-backed, otherwise Western overlords or the King of England, who's not a good steward of any land whatsoever. So rather than give it to the incest family of the monarchy or whoever has land title in the United States at any given time, probably better to give it back to Indigenous folk, because they'll make good decisions, and this is a great decision. So she's banned from 16% of the state, which I think is awesome. Keep going. The 6 tribes have banned Noem, cited disparaging and racist comments she made at a town hall in March, in which she said Native parents were uncommitted to their children's education, and accused tribal leaders without evidence of colluding with Mexican cartels on reservation land. The tribes plan to keep out the bans until Noem apologizes. She won't apologize, so I think the bans remain in place, at least for now. And that sounds completely on brand for her, because that's just the way she talks.
Thank you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's intensifying its attacks across the Gaza Strip from Rafah to Jabalia, the largest refugee camp in Gaza. The official death toll has now topped 35,000, including more than 14,500 children. According to the United Nations, more than 360,000 Palestinians have fled Rafah, despite fears there's nowhere to go to escape the Israeli bombardment.
There's no safe place.
Holy Beer Dragon, thank you for resubscribing at tier 1 with the message hello.
The situation is very hard. There's no food, no drinks. Even the water is hard to get. My children cry and tell me, Mother, we want to drink, and I don't know what to do. I'm like everyone else who left Rafah and came here, and we are displaced here, but there's no safe place.
Huge story, just breaking from Ryan Grimm. Upwards of 20 American doctors are trapped at the European hospital in Gaza facing extreme dehydration. At least one is on an IV drip. This is a developing situation. The State Department tells me it is, quote, working around the clock and coordinating with Israel and Egypt to evacuate the borders. Yet a UN vehicle heading to European hospitals was fired on by the IDF today, killing its driver, which of course, war crimes have been enacted upon dehydrated doctors who were trying to save children's lives. The mission has been in a safe house, but was urged to leave, concerned that the IDF would strike it. A member of the mission took this video as part of the dystopian route from the safe house to the hospital, so you can see the extent of the genocide that has taken place. And again, people can see with their own eyes, no matter how much it's like, well, yes, but this was a military operation. Israel had a right to defend itself, and we needed to try as best we could to both rescue the hostages and eliminate Hamas. No, this is genocide. The genocide. Yeah. I've seen special military operations. You know, we've watched some of them POV sometimes. The United States loves boasting when it has successful ones. And you get to watch a good old terrorist get assassinated. You can see the special ops coming in, and ladies and gentlemen, we got him. So yeah, I've seen what these special military operations can look like. This is not that. This is genocide. You're looking at genocide. You're looking at complete and utter destruction, and the forced movement, aka ethnic cleansing of peoples, multiple times. The fact that there's tens of thousands of people that are now being forced to once again try and go north to escape Rafah. These are people who are sometimes operating on 250 calories a day. So think of getting just 250 calories a day. Essentially, what is that? Like a couple slices of bread. You get a couple slices of bread for your entirety for all the meal that you've had that day. That's if you get any food at all, but that's not an addition to water. You've already moved all the way from the northern part of the Gaza Strip all the way to the south. You've escaped multiple bombing campaigns. You've seen carnage, death, destruction, murder, horrors, the likes of which you never thought you'd ever experience in your lifetime. You've arrived near the Rafah border, and now you're being told that once again you have to move all the way back up to the north to where they have supposed safe areas for you to go, and in that process, again, operating on maybe only 250 calories. Hopefully you'll have the energy it takes to, in the incredibly hot heat, move from location A to location B, where there is no safety guaranteed, resources guaranteed, food, water, supplies, anything guaranteed. Basically, just go. So forcibly moving people back and forth, lesser and lesser and lesser and lesser calories, lesser and lesser and lesser water, shock, terror, bombing everywhere, bombing every place you go, moving back and forth. But this is ethnic cleansing. This is genocide. People are going to just be dropping like flies. Eventually, it doesn't even need bombing campaigns. Eventually, just pure heat exhaustion will drive everyone to their deaths. A relative of a doctor stranded there said he suspects but isn't certain that a UN vehicle fired on by the IDF was part of an effort to rescue the American medical mission. A family member of one of the doctors stranded at the European hospital said he suspected the vehicle was part of the rescue mission but was uncertain. We are aware that a car that is similarly supposed to be the rescue passage was shot at and the UN employees were killed and injured, and we fear for their ability to have a safe passage and exit. We are aware that there's an active shelling around the hospital and that the staff have been told to stay away from the windows. State Department response. State Department confirms 20 American doctors stranded behind Israeli siege and are facing dehydration when pressed by the Intercept's Ryan Grimm. Good job, Ryan, by the way, on this.
Ryan, go ahead.
That there are two medical missions of American citizens, doctors who are at the European hospital in Khan Yunis facing dehydration. At least one of them is on an IV drip now. Our understanding is that relatives have been in touch with the State Department, U.S. administration. Is there anything you can say about efforts to...
Unreal. The Biden administration is arming this. Like, just think of the reality of this. I think this story, once it gets picked up more, once more people start talking about it and reporting on it, 20 American doctors dying of dehydration. One of them has already been moved to be on an IV drip, being shot at, and the transport being potentially murdered by the IDF as they're trying to get out of the country. It unfortunately seems to take white and oftentimes American, sometimes Australian or Canadian, but white, the people who are citizens of Western countries who are murdered by the IDF for larger politicians to start taking notice, start making statements, start voicing their own outrage. But this once again could be one of those stories.
Get them out. And was the UN vehicle that was on the way to the European hospital part of those efforts?
So let me start with the second part. I'm not sure of the operational and logistical specifics of what was involved in those specific efforts or not, but I can say is that we're aware of these reports of U.S. citizens, doctors, and medical professionals currently unable to leave Gaza. As I said before, we don't control this border crossing, and this is a incredibly complex situation that has very serious implications for the safety and security of U.S. citizens, but we're continuing to work around the clock with the government of Israel, with the government of Egypt, to work on this issue, not just to address the very serious humanitarian assistance concerns that I just talked about, but as you so pointed out, and Matt have addressed before, Rafah is a conduit for the safe departure of foreign nationals, which is why we continue to want to see it get opened as swiftly as possible.
And what does it say about conditions more generally in Rafah and in Khan Yunis if American doctors who only arrived there recently are already suffering from...
That's a huge question. Again, American doctors. We're talking 20 American doctors who were sent there, and then many of them are arriving recently. Some of them are already suffering from dehydration. One of them is already put on IV, and they're looking to get evacuated. That's how fucked up and dire the situation is. And again, heroes going in there specifically to try and save people's lives, often children. And you can listen to the testimony. I'm not going to play it on stream. Maybe there'll be a couple minutes of it played on the Democracy Now. But if you listen to the testimonies from the doctors who have returned and what they've seen and said, they're beyond changed forever. Like, just as human beings, they've seen things that they will never unsee. They will never be the same people again. That's the takeaway from the recordings when you listen to what they have to say about what they've seen. And yeah, it's as fucked up and dark as you can imagine.
Dehydration and malnutrition.
So look, we have not been unambiguous about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. It is a crisis.
We haven't been unambiguous. We have been fueling it. We have been aiding it. We have been materially supporting it. We have been providing the arms and bombs necessary for it to continue. But we have been pointing out that it's bad. Oh yeah, that bad thing we keep funding.
No amount of humanitarian aid at this moment is enough. We need to be doing everything we can to get more humanitarian aid, food, medicine, water, other appropriate supplies into Gaza. And that is why...
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been pointed out before that it seems like a lot of U.S. officials are more concerned with the interests of Israel than they are sometimes within their own citizens. If they're journalists, if they're doctors, Shireen Abu Akleh, like what happened there, they wouldn't even let her have a proper funeral. Like, witnessing that wasn't enough for U.S. politicians to be rightfully horrified. One of the darkest moments in humanity, and then the world just watched as someone wasn't, like, they weren't even allowed to mourn her body. That's so fucked up. It's so profoundly evil and twisted. But again, one of those things where, well, yes, the IDF has investigated themselves and found that they did no wrong, and yep, they've absolved themselves. The United States is agreeing.
You have seen this administration champion really an all of the above approach when it comes to humanitarian aid. We have been engaging directly with partners in the region to ensure that every crossing possible that can allow for the access of trucks and other things is able to make its way.
Did you see Bill Burr on Bill Maher's podcast recently? Oh no, is it really bad? Please tell me that it's Bill Burr fucking ripping into Bill Maher and not just the two of them agreeing and talking about how the kids ain't right anymore, because don't really need that.
To Gaza, you have seen us undertake airdrops. You've seen our partners in Jordan undertake airdrops, and we're continuing to press and hope that
no one gives a fuck about your little breadcrumbs that have also killed people, by the way. Your airdrops of supplies that, yes, have killed people trying to need supplies to live. But
the situation is really hard.
Palestinian health officials are warning the entire system in Gaza is hours from collapse due to a massive fuel shortage following Israel's seizure of the Rafah border crossing. Over the weekend, Israel ordered the forced evacuation of the Kuwaiti hospital in Rafah. Israel's attack on Rafah faces growing international condemnation. On Sunday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Israel should, quote, get out of Gaza.
Pierre's not a populist, he's a faux populist. And if you want to tell people about faux populism, get them, if you want a primer, watch the video by Carlos Maza on Tucker Carlson and his particular brand of faux populism. But basically, people who try to talk about how they care deeply about the working man, either the working American or the working Canadian, the blue collar worker, Plumber Joe, that kind of shit. And if you look at their actual track record and what they advocate for and what they've done their entire lives, is most likely massive breaks for corporations, massive breaks for the mega rich, socialism in the form of we're going to distribute it to the wealthiest, Canadians exclusively, wealthy property owners, etc., that kind of stuff, while espousing that they care about workers, while at the same time not supporting unions, not supporting striking workers, not supporting striking movements, not supporting worker solidarity, crushing unions. That's usually what you'll get with someone who's a faux populist. And the same kind of faux populist will have to blame a different group rather than the capitalist class. They will usually blame immigrants or the gays or trans trans people or whoever they want to scapegoat at any given time, because that's better than pointing towards the actual reasons and faults with their own policies. If you have a conservative or a far-right conservative who offers you nothing and is not actually doing anything for the benefit of the people, they have to lie and get everyone galvanized at a cause. Otherwise, they'd look like within, right? Like, what have you offered? What are you providing? What is your government doing to help the common man, the working man that you espouse to care about? Well, it's actually the immigrants that are destroying your lives. They're coming in, they're sneaking into the border, they're trying to take your jobs, they're trying to ruin society. Oh, it's trans kids. They're trying to pervert the very idea of what gender is. They're trying to destroy society and the actual makeup, you know, he, she, man, woman, guy, gal, get married, have kids, all that. That dynamic is being called into question because of trans kids' very existence. We need to stop them from participating in sports and all this kind of stuff. It's like, does that actually help, you know, the average person put food on the table? Of course, the answer is no. Doesn't do anything. It just makes people whose lives are already tough even tougher, as people who are confused are going after them for no reason.
Gaza, unquote. Meanwhile, Israel's advance on northern Gaza is forcing many displaced Palestinians in Gaza City
Thanks,
to flee
Broski. No
again.
problem. I hope it helps.
What happened with us is that the Israeli forces dropped flyers on us to evacuate the camp as there will be strikes. We left the camp, but we don't know where to go. We don't know where to head. We don't have food or drink or clothes. What do they want from us? They're killing us and our children. Shame on them. What shall we do? We're staying on the streets. This is just so unjust. Have some mercy on us, Arabs, Muslims, Americans. Have mercy on us. We're being slaughtered. Shame on you. We're all being killed. Shame on you. Why are you doing this to us?
Pro-Palestinian students staged protests at college graduations across the United States over the weekend. At Duke University, scores of students walked out of comedian Jerry Seinfeld's commencement address. At the University of California, Berkeley, Saturday's commencement ceremony was interrupted a number of times by students.
It's just like, it's nuts seeing how powerful the Chinese TikTok algorithm is at converting all these Gen Zs and younger generations into steadily becoming radicals. What's happening? It's so effective. All these TikTokers.
A day earlier at the UC Berkeley Law School commencement, 8 students wore shirts spelling out the phrase UC divest. In other news from California, riot police made one.
The YouTube comments say Bill Burr roasts the shit out of Bill Maher. I'll watch that in its entirety if it is Bill Burr, like, ripping into Bill Maher, because fuck, you know, Bill Maher. And Bill Burr, when he wants to be fucking a lightning rod, can be a well-trained missile. So.
One arrest outside Pomona College's
Graduates
commencement,
walked out of
which
Mike
was
Pence's speech to
moved
Notre
after
Dame.
students set up a Gaza solidarity encampment on the main graduation stage. Meanwhile, at Virginia Commonwealth University,
I didn't agree with everything. Okay, well, maybe it's just a good time code.
Staged a silent Gaza walkout during Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin's commencement address.
Yeah, I keep seeing these things where it's like the majority of students don't actually care about this issue, and the majority of students don't actually like care about the protesters. So says Axio poll of 500 students from this one conservative school, and it's like, I don't know. I think like y'all have not only lost a couple of students, you lost a generation. You know, I'll be honest with you. Genuinely, like, just the pure sickness of trying to sell everyone on the idea that this is in the interests of America, that you associated this with America, the nation, the empire itself, and its security interests. This is necessary to uphold that. Yeah, most people are going to see all this carnage, destruction, and murder of kids and be like, oh, okay, so then I don't want to support that. I don't want this to keep happening.
Comes as the police crackdown continues on student protests. On Friday, police raided an encampment at the University of Pennsylvania, arresting at least 33 protesters. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, police arrested 10 students who had relaunched an encampment at MIT. Police have now made nearly 3,000 arrests at student-led protests over the past.
3,000. 3,000. How many war criminals have been arrested so far? What's the score? Is it still 0? 0 v 3,000 people protesting war criminals existing? So 3,000 to 0. Cool stuff. Good use of resources. all the time it's going to take, think of all the police budgets it took to get all those 3,000 people arrested, then booked, detained, transported, processed, and now there's a lot of fucking paperwork for 3,000 people. Yeah, and that's not just the US, by the way. That's also in Canada, also in Europe. Yeah, Amsterdam. There's another place where they're cracking down on protesters, student protesters too.
Last month. Meanwhile,
Assaulted,
the trustees
beaten,
at the Union
gassed.
Theological Seminary,
holy
which is
hell.
affiliated with Columbia University, have voted to divest from, quote, companies
post it in the
substantially
Discord,
and
Jack. I need to
attractively
vet all
benefiting
links
from the
that we're
war
sharing.
in Palestine, unquote.
And things
In
are too
related
serious not
news,
to.
students at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore have ended their 2-week-old encampment after school officials agreed to consider divesting from Israel. On the international front, professors at the University of Amsterdam are staging a walkout today. This comes a week after police used a bulldozer to violently break up a student Gaza encampment.
Holy hell.
A new report by the U.S. State Department has concluded Israel likely used U.S. weapons in violation.
Look at this. Just like... you can't sell this as anything else now. Is it like it like everything just went way too far, way beyond what you could ever try and spin. You like we have too many cameras, too much internet, too much access. Everyone can see it. Like you can't look at this shot and tell me this is self-defense. Yeah, really helping get those hostages back. Hopefully not in any of the locations you see before you. Anywhere. Like literally anywhere. I don't know if any square inch here is safe. Like even if you're like, well, I mean, someone maybe in one of these buildings up here, it's like that's if the building's not collapsing from within, just not spikes, things falling on you. Very, very dangerous to be anywhere here. Like just again.
Of U.S. and international law, but the report claims the Biden administration has not yet found specific instances that could force the U.S. to withhold military aid. The findings came in a report issued Friday to Congress. Former State Department official Josh Paul, who resigned over Biden's Gaza policy, criticized what he described as a self-contradictory report.
It does say that it is reasonable to assume that U.S. weapons have been used to commit violations of international humanitarian law, and yet it does not say that Israel has violated international humanitarian law. It does say that Israel has restricted humanitarian assistance into Gaza, and yet it says that currently Israel is not restricting U.S.-funded humanitarian assistance in Gaza, which is an absurd thing to say, given that the IDF is at this moment closing and has closed for several days the Rafah crossing point, which is the main entry point for humanitarian assistance.
The United Nations General Assembly voted 143-9 Friday in support of Palestine becoming a full UN member.
Canada, you're in here. Australia, did you abstain too? Did any of the other fucking Commonwealth countries do the cowardly move? Not as bad as this. Granted, slightly better, but still cowardly as fuck. Canada. Mike Boy from Mayor, thanks for giving me a tier 1 sub to Daughter Tiamat 420.
25 countries abstained from the vote. The United States and Israel both voted against the measure. The vote grants new rights and privileges to Palestine, but not full UN membership, which requires support from the UN Security Council. Last month, the U.S. vetoed a Palestine statehood resolution at the Security Council. On Friday, Palestinian Ambassador Riyad Mansour urged nations to support Palestine becoming a state.
A yes vote is a vote for Palestinian existence. It is not against any state, but it is against the attempts to deprive us of our state.
Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, protested the vote by shredding a copy of the UN Charter at the podium.
You are shredding the UN Charter with your own hands. Yes, that's what you're doing, shredding the UN Charter. Shame
In another
on you.
development, Egypt has announced it will join South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the International Court of
What is this, a charter for ants?
Justice. 3 Israeli whistleblowers who worked at a military detention camp in the Negev desert have detailed to CNN horrific abuse faced by Gazans detained since October 7th. One whistleblower shared photographs that show Palestinians being strapped down, blindfolded, and held in diapers at the site. Doctors have been forced to amputate the limbs of some prisoners due to injuries sustained from
concentration
constant
camps.
handcuffing.
Fucking U.S. taxpayer funded concentration camps. Like, that's what they are. They're concentration camps.
One whistleblower said they beat Palestinians not to gather intelligence, but out of revenge.
Like, everything is here. There's mass graves, there's mass testimonies of torture, mass testimonies of sexual abuse, mass testimonies of sexual abuse of children, mass testimonies of the detention of children, mass testimonies of the torture, improper confinement of children. Now there's concentration camps and evidence of concentration camps, whistleblowers of concentration camps. Like, how fucking blatant and horrifying does everything need to get before everyone recognizes how bad this is? I can't wait to talk a little bit later about this new movement online about the digital guillotines, because it's phenomenal. It's great. It's people getting creative, and honestly, get creative in any way you can. It doesn't matter what your medium is. If you are bringing attention to, again, injustices globally, it doesn't matter what injustice they're for. You're contributing towards trying to fight them in some way or another, and whether that be a digital campaign that is effectively scaring the fuck out of celebrities, the rich and powerful, those who need social media to exist. And I know people are gonna be like, Lance, you also need social media. You're on the socials. I was like, fine, hold me to account. Hold everyone to account. We should all be accountable. You should be making noise about Palestine. You should be making noise about the Congo. You should be making noise about Darfur. People should be required to do so and use their platforms for good. I'm for this program, actually, and I think it's great. And I think the fact that it's actually scared a handful of celebrities into actually making statements, like Lizzo straight up was like, oh, I'm going to post a video about all these issues. Hopefully people stop blocking me. Yeah, good. I'm glad not only is it having effects, but it's working. I saw that, like, Kim Kardashian lost like 123,000 followers or something with a T-Swiftie comment where she got like the T-Swifties mad at her. And I was like, if T-Swifties, and the worst damage that could be done to you was like 123,000 followers or something like that. Apparently she lost like 3 million in the first little while, as soon as like the digital guillotine got pointed at her. As soon as like, yeah, Kim Kardashian has not only not mentioned Gaza or Palestine once, she was actually told free Palestine and responded with free everyone. So she tried to all lives matter. So yeah, she's part of it now. And then boom. Yeah, and that's really going to hurt you in the algorithm if you get mass blocked by a bunch of people too. It's just like, again, creative ways of doing activism that are actually having some tangible effects in the real world, so much so that like I think some people are actually getting legitimately worried. Good. Get disruptive. Start realizing that yes, there's way more power to the people, way more power in numbers, and that yeah, if the majority of people are disgusted, reviled, and don't want to support this anymore, that's a good thing, actually. And politicians should be listening to the people who got them elected, right? They should be afraid of the people who got them elected, not in a violent way, in a like, you will not be able to continue to represent us if you do not represent us, and you are not representing us. Like Joe Biden, at this point in history, I would be sitting here had it not been for all of this, most likely talking about a lot of accomplishments, being like, that's a really, really good thing. You know, the amount of drone strikes plummeted after Donald Trump. His support of unions is pretty remarkable. Should be talking about, the FDA, and we should be talking about, the environmental this, and I would be going through a whole list of things, but instead, it's that Joe Biden has positioned himself in such a way where he is willing to risk losing this election to Donald Trump in exchange for supporting Israel, despite the fact that now there's a pretty long and concerted effort telling you that, like, the majority of people are getting more and more frustrated and disgusted and sick at this. But again, you want to support Benjamin Netanyahu more than you want to defeat Donald Trump.
In other news from Israel, protests against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet are continuing as Israel marks its first Memorial Day since the October 7th attacks. Earlier today, relatives of dead.
And by the way, I saw someone, I forget which account it was, post about like McDonald's is offering like a $4 like Happy Meal or something for the first time to try and help like plummeting sales. And the plummeting sales, I think, they're more international than they are in North America. I don't think North American boycotts of McDonald's are actually having the effect that they're having in other parts of, say, like the Middle East and stuff like that. But either way, people replying with like, I will buy your food tomorrow if you just release a we're not going to do business in Israel. We're not going to support the Israeli war machine. We're not going to ever give Happy Meals to the IDF, any of that. If you're just like, we're going to take all our restaurants out of Israel and we're no longer going to support, an apartheid regime, then yeah, that'll do a lot more to sway me than the $3 meal or the $2 meal, or even if you give this shit away for free at this point, right?
Soldiers heckled Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir as he spoke at a military cemetery. On Saturday,
I don't know if you saw it too. Another resignation in the Biden administration. This one was from a U.S. Army major, which is pretty huge. Let's see if I can get it because the message is pretty good. Team, I want to thank you all for welcoming me with more congeniality, blah, blah, blah. I have great administration for the work this center does, help policymakers. The policy has never been far from my mind for the past 6 months is nearly unqualified support for the government of Israel, which has enabled and empowered the killing and starvation of tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians. As we were recently reminded, this unconditional support also encourages reckless escalation that risks wider war. My work here, however administrative or marginal as it appeared, has unquestionably contributed to that support. The past has represented us with the most horrific and heartbreaking images imaginable, sometimes playing on the news, in our own spaces, and I've been unable to ignore the connection between those images and my duties here. This caused me incredible shame and guilt. Most of you know I had already intended to leave the army at some point, but this moral injury is what led me to finally submit my resignation on November 1st. I understand that these words come as a surprise to many of you. Despite my anxieties, I continue to do my job, seeming enthusiasm, without voicing my concerns. I had my reasons. I hoped if I held down a little longer, the war would be over. I hoped time and again the latest, quote, outrage would finally prompt a material shift in support for Israel. You know what they say about the definition of insanity. Sorry. I told myself my individual contribution was minimal, and if I didn't do my job, someone else would, so why cause to serve for nothing? I told myself I don't make policy, it is not my place to question it. Above all, I was afraid. Afraid of violating unprofessional norms. Afraid of disappointing others I respect. Afraid you would feel I betrayed. I'm sure some of you will feel that way reading this. These are not indefensible reasons. Each of us signed up to serve, knowing we might have to support policies we weren't fully convinced of. Our defense institutions couldn't function otherwise. However, at some point, it became difficult to defend the outcomes of this particular policy. At some point, whatever the justification, you're either advancing a policy that enables the mass starvation of children, or you're not. I know that I did, in a small way, willingly advance this policy. And I want to clarify that as a descendant of European Jews, I was raised in particularly unforgiving moral environment when it came to the topic of bearing responsibility for ethnic cleansing. My grandfather refused to even purchase products manufactured in Germany, where the paramount importance of, quote, never again, and the inadequacy of just following orders were oft repeated. I am haunted by the knowledge that I have failed those principles, but I also have hope that my grandfather could afford me some grace, that he would still be proud of me for stepping away from this war, however belatedly. I know that I would also regret waiting any longer to share my story with you, because the hardest part of the past 6 months was feeling totally alone. Like I was the only one disturbed by the footage from Gaza, the only one who felt like a participant, not just a passive observer, in the destruction there. For the past 6 months, I've heard anyone speak about the war in those terms ever. I felt like I was living in an alternate universe. I now realize the obvious. If I was afraid to voice my concerns, you were too. I've always known what kind of people you are, and you should have more faith in this team. So I'm deliberately not sending this to the entire agency. I'm writing to the people I know who might value hearing the reasons I chose to walk away. I understand that's not a choice available to everyone, and that's not what I'm demanding of you. We all have our own list of reasons to stay. I just want to let you know you're not alone. I'll be local. I'll be happy to anyone who's out in the office. Best, Harrison. Liv, thank you so much for the raiding party. Welcome in, Raiders. Hello. We're not exactly covering silly stuff yet. We will be, though. If you stick around, we'll be covering some mighty silly stuff of high silliness indeed. Only the finest of sillies, I promise you. And we're just currently covering world news. If y'all didn't hear, major withdrawal from his position, U.S. general now leaving the Biden administration, effectively saying he can no longer be part of the mass starvation of children and can no longer be complicit in it. Very strong words from a top-ranking general in his resignation letter. So that's very, very powerful stuff. Can everyone go to twitch.tv/Liv Agar? Go give her a follow back. She's awesome. And yeah, welcome. Good to see all of you. Again, the coverage will not be as heavy. I know some people, someone dropped in here the other day and they're like, Lance, I see your clips on YouTube and you're always making jokes and you're always being silly and stuff. And then I watch your live streams and it's all just like doom, panic, world on fire, burning. I was like, yeah, I know this. It's like it's having dinner and dessert. You gotta eat the broccoli first, and broccoli can be delicious before you can move on to the waffles. And we will have waffles. You know, there's waffles on the horizon.
Held in Gaza.
It's the work-life balance. Exactly.
Protest in Tel Aviv. Nama Weinberg is the cousin of Itay Sversky, who reportedly died in captivity.
It is because of Netanyahu that there is no hostage release deal and there are no hostages being brought back home. He is abandoning our families to their death for his own political interests. Entering Rafah and expanding the operations there are both hinder the hostages release negotiation and put the hostages' lives in grave danger. So long as Netanyahu is in power, the hostages will not return. He does not want them to return.
In other international news, Russian President Vladimir Putin has removed Sergei Shoigu from defense minister. Shoigu had served in the role since 2012 and had overseen Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He's being replaced by the economist Andrei Belousov. This comes as Russia says it's captured 9 more villages in Ukraine's Kharkiv region. In recent days, thousands of Ukrainians have evacuated their homes as Russia expands its attack near the city of Vovchansk. Meanwhile, at least 15 people died in the Russian city of Belgorod after a downed Ukrainian missile hit an apartment building.
I don't know how to tell you kids, but Jerry Seinfeld at your graduation is going to be the highlight of your life. And you missed it. It's all downhill from here. Ouch. Man, you think so little of children. I mean, I think at this point, seeing him speak wouldn't even be the highlight of your day.
Building. In Sudan,
Did you have a satisfying
Doctors Without
fart?
Borders says 2 children were
scratch an
killed
itch?
and others injured
Perhaps
overnight
enjoy a
Sunday
fresh apple.
when a bomb fell outside a pediatric hospital in the western city of El Fasher.
No. We don't have broccoli and waffles in Canada. Don't get it twisted, all right? We do have fries and curds, cheese, and gravy, and you melt it all together. And then you throw Montreal smoked meat on the top, and then you put some elk and moose, and then boom, you got yourself a Canadian sandwich right there. Yeah, it's what we call the stew.
Clean up your room.
Yeah, we there's not really like good Canadian food. I mean, like, yeah, I guess tourtière is pretty good. That's the Quebecois mince pie. It's satisfying, quite a tasty mince pie. Yeah, you should be looking towards indigenous food though. Indigenous cooking, a lot of that is very, very delicious. A lot of really great stuff.
The capital of North Darfur. Also on Sunday were reports of another 27 deaths there as the Sudanese army clashed with the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, as fears mount of possible carnage in the last major stronghold of the army. Some 800,000 internally displaced people have taken refuge in Al Fasher, which was once thought to be relatively shielded from the war. A Tunisian lawyers association has called for a nationwide strike after mass police officers raided Tunisia's Bar Association offices and arrested a prominent lawyer. Sonia Damani is an outspoken critic of the government of the Tunisian President Kais Saied and said in a TV interview last week half of Tunisia's youth want to leave Tunisia.
Could you imagine if it was like that here? I mean, we really take for granted sometimes just the ability to criticize our own politicians and leaders, right? To an extent, but like still, like imagine just watching Sam Cedar or even Amy Goodman running around where every 2 minutes we're like, I hope she doesn't get arrested. Oh my God. Oh God, they're tackling him. They're tackling Sam. He's down. Oh God, I can see his legs.
She was being questioned about Black African migrants who have been expelled from Tunisia. Damani's arrest was captured on a live French news broadcast as a reporter was covering her persecution by the government. 2 journalists were also arrested Saturday as part of the ongoing crackdown on dissent. On Sunday, protesters took to the streets of Tunis. This is Ahmed Najib Chebbi, head of the opposition alliance.
Today, people are being arrested for anything, absolutely anything. On top of all that, we are undermining the upcoming elections. Tunisia will be on the brink of crisis and collapse. Therefore, we advocate for holding the elections on the scheduled date, ensuring they are conducted within the framework of freedom and equal opportunity.
In Afghanistan, flash floods have killed at least 315 people in northern villages. Another 1,600 have been injured, and thousands of homes have been destroyed or damaged, as have health facilities and essential infrastructure.
The flash floods destroyed our homes.
Amy's really keeping it light on a Monday,
family,
you know?
including women and children. So many livestock have been destroyed as well. We have no food, no drinking water, no shelter, no blankets, nothing at all. The floods have destroyed everything. Out of 42 houses, only 2 or 3 houses remained. The floods have destroyed the entire valley.
The affected area is in dire need of assistance, but Afghanistan has seen its international aid slash following the Taliban takeover in 2021. In Indonesia, flooding and mudslides in West Sumatra killed at least 43 people over the weekend, with over a dozen others missing. The monsoon downpours also triggered cold lava flow, a thick mixture of volcanic ash and other debris. In Canada, over 100 active wildfires are burning, prompting evacuation orders in British Columbia and Alberta.
It's much earlier than normal, by the way. As someone in British Columbia where there's suddenly a lot of fires, Fort McMurray getting evacuated, it's like, oh, fire season in what, mid-May? Oh, that's new. It's kind of like it just keeps on rolling back, so eventually it's going to come full circle, or it'll just maybe be perpetual. Is kind of where things are headed.
Authorities in Minnesota issued the state's first air quality alert of the year Sunday as wildfire smoke drifted across the border. In Spain, the ruling Socialist Party won a majority of seats in Catalan elections Sunday, in a major upset for the region's separatist movement. If the Socialists can forge a ruling coalition with other parties, it'll be the first Catalan government in over a decade led by a party which does not support independence. Former President Donald Trump will be back in court today for the fourth week of witness testimony in his criminal hush money and election interference trial. Trump's former fixer, attorney Michael Cohen, is set to testify today.
So bored.
Meanwhile, the New York Times and ProPublica have revealed Trump could be forced to pay more than $100 million to the IRS for improperly claiming tax
Colorado River may be recovering from a 20-year drought. Hell yeah. Okay, that's good. We need some good news. Good news is good.
Write-offs on a Chicago skyscraper by writing off the same losses twice. And jury selection begins today in the corruption trial of New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez. He's accused of taking bribes to benefit Egypt and Qatar. And those are some of the headlines. This is
Good job. Good job, Bob Menendez. Happy that took place. All right, we saw the shredder. Do want to watch a little bit about the Biden arms sale. The pausing of the bombs. One bomb pause. And how everyone lost their minds. One bomb shipment pause equal Hamas.
Rebranding yourself is a tried and true formula for many such organizations. In fact, it's why the Catholic Church now goes by the name Gary.
Oh, by the way, the Boy Scouts controversy is so utterly absurd. In Canada, they've been called the Scouts for a while, long time. Yeah, it hasn't been gendered for a long time. It's utterly strange and bizarre to be like, no, that's our thing. That's men, only men. Men Scouts, Boy Scouts. Sure. How about you can take the term Boy Scouts and you're not allowed to, like, molest kids anymore. How about that? Because it's got a lot more problems with child abuse and kids getting abused sexually than it does with its gendered name and the potential of having it being infected by the femoids.
So
we're a nonsense country, yeah. I mean, from one nonsense country to another.
I feel terrible for anybody at home named Gary right now. What? So what is the issue?
There used to be sacred organizations where the children could really flourish. Is anything sacred, Bob Brooks?
No. Yeah.
No.
Nothing is sacred. What did happen to all those sacred organizations, Gary? But as you all were saying,
what happens to institutions in America and really all over the world is patriotic people start these institutions and the left must destroy it. It's a sad day when young boys can't learn how to be strong men. We've wrecked it. Actually, they wrecked it.
Sorry, I'm a leftist. I've never heard that be like a cause, célèbre. Like that's the number one thing we got to talk about. Hey, leftist meeting here. All right. So yes, there's a ongoing genocide in Palestine that we have to do some activism towards. We should be talking about the unhoused and some initiatives to help, bolster unions in our area. And also the Boy Scouts. It's called Boy Scouts. Why not they, them Scouts? Hey, lefties, come on. Let's get radical. Let's change the world. Let's smash some shit.
Okay, I don't want to break character here or anything, but this guy who
they allowed girls in the Boy Scouts in the 2000s. Oh my.
Is blaming the left for the loss of our institutions where young boys can become strong men. His name is Matt Schlapp. You may remember him. He's the head of the American Conservative Union. You may remember that as the strong man who was sued. This guy was sued by another fella for non-consensually grabbing his dick in 2022. Yeah. That only got dropped after a reported $480,000 settlement. The point being, when this guy...
Oh, that just reminded me. There's a new 2-part special that just came out on Kevin Spacey, and content warning, because it deals a lot with sexual abuse, but primarily with the sexual abuse of men. There are so many brave men in that documentary who come forward, who tell their stories for the very first time, tell their stories of sexual abuse, are fucking... It shows a new kind of strength that you don't often see on television, and that there is beauty in men being vulnerable, and there is an incredible power and strength to it, like this, in ways in which you will be in awe at how, like, you know, strong some of these dudes are. Again, opening up, being emotional, and talking about how they've experienced abuse at the hands of Kevin Spacey, who just, yes, is an absolute... He's way more of a monster than you ever knew. That, like, I knew he was a monster, but I didn't know, like, this did... Oh, wow, does it ever go to, like... Yeah, it's... I'm not going to spoil anything, not going to ruin it, but if you haven't seen it, just came out, and yeah, I was just, like, yeah, floored by some of the shit that I was seeing in that.
Talks about the depravity of our institutions. He knows of what he speaks.
It's called Spacey Unmasked.
All of this false outrage
Spacey Unmasked.
is starting to make me
Spacey Unmasked or
cynical.
Kevin Spacey Unmasked?
It's starting to make me cynical about America's media ecosystem. Is there anything else going on that does merit a DEFCON 1 freakout?
In the end, this is a sad day for America. A moral failing of a magnitude we can't even begin to calculate.
Oh my God, a moral failing we can't even begin to calculate.
I thought the Boy Scouts were like shut down or something, or went bankrupt. I guess I need to read. Like, I saw, didn't they have a monstrous fucking like sexual abuse scandal? Thousands and thousands of young boys have been sexually abused within the Boy Scouts. Horrifying, you know, Catholic Church levels of depravity and disgustingness. And that was the last time I heard of it. And all of a sudden, this is like this huge thing where the right's just like, they're taking it away once again. Yeah, now apparently it's non-binary scouts, or it's non-denominational scouts, you know, and then we can't call them even boys, and then we can't refer to them as he, him, and it's they, them scouts, and what the like what? Since when do you guys care about this?
Perhaps it's a combo
they filed
failing,
for bankruptcy? Okay.
an appliance that changed its name to be more inclusive. Is Mr. Coffee now they, them coffee?
I drink it.
Is that the danger we now face?
President Biden threatening to withhold more military aid if the Israeli military carries out an all-out assault on the city of Rafah.
President Biden halting a weapons shipment of 3,500 bombs to Israel.
We paused one shipment of high payload munitions.
Oh my God. The Biden administration has paused one shipment of 3,500 munitions of the over 300,000 munitions Israel has already dropped on Gaza to
Yeah, thank you. Just to put it in perspective, because I know some people were getting real excited about this, being like, "Oh, well, yes, this is a changing of the tide, a turning of the course." You know, now the Biden administration, they've really put themselves on the right side of history here. The 3,500 munitions, so yeah, that's going to be a complete shipment paused. Yes, Israel has said that they have all the weapons that they need to be able to carry out the Rafah invasion. That is true. So this will actually tangibly do nothing, and we have not restricted the amount of shipments that we've been given to Israel, despite the fact that we now at this point have pretty conclusive knowledge of them committing a variety of war crimes and atrocities. Yeah, that is also true. But yeah, we just want to, you know, make a statement. Just test this out. Just see how people feel about like a pause. Just one pause. One 3,500 bombs of the 300,000 that Israel has dropped. And yeah, that you can really see what you get, you know, for your dollar when you see the actual just like drone footage and the complete devastation where there's nothing left, just nothing, gone, all just life, buildings, trees, plants, everything, just nothing. Yeah.
Try and prevent the Israelis from attacking the area where all the refugees of this war are currently sheltering. I mean, oh my God. Or to put that another way.
And now what the Biden administration has done is they become the primary protector of Hamas.
He absolutely is siding with the terrorists.
The only reason they're not dancing in Iran is because they don't believe in dancing.
Joe Biden. Whoa, Lindsey Graham, when have I ever seen you bust a move? Huh? Come on, play that funky music, white boy. I know you can do it. Come on, I want to see one little dance, you know? Just want to see him. I mean, he could do a line dance, I'm sure. Probably that's what he's probably accustomed to, I'd assume.
Has been the greatest friend to Hamas and Hezbollah that there is on planet Earth.
Amen.
Damn, he's good.
Oh my Amen. High
That's nothing
five.
says gravitas like.
Yeah, greatest friend to Hamas that ever lived. High five. Self high five. Nice.
He's a terrorist. Everybody. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. You people are children. That came out wrong, but
some. Penal count theory is unfortunately true.
Why would Biden halt that shipment now?
I've made it clear to Bibi and the War Cabinet, they're not going to get our support if, in fact, they go in these population centers.
If they...
Yeah, wait, this one. So, specifically, yeah, that. Oh, Rafah, yes, end of the line, as they say. Or not so much, as the tanks roll in and the bombs be dropping for a while prior to that, too. But end of the line, that's the red line. So now it's been crossed. Still being crossed, yeah. Well, there'll be new lines that can be drawn up, right? At any given time.
Go into the population centers. The whole place is a population center.
Pretty much.
They've been in the population center for 6 months. Gaza's all population center. You know what you never hear around Gaza? Yeah, I don't live in the populated area. I live in upstate Gaza. I live by the lakes. It's really quiet there. Is there no one who can offer a more nuanced analysis of our newly formulated position on this conflict, preferably in some type of catacomb or echoey tunnel?
What Biden is doing with respect to Israel is disgraceful. If any Jewish person voted for Joe Biden, they should be ashamed of themselves.
Wow. Okay. Trump, whatever, he like the Jewish Lorax. He speaks for the Jewish people who cannot speak for themselves. My word, Donald, that's an aggressive statement. All right.
My apologies to you, Rabbi. Thank you so much for taking time off of your condom-less porn star hush money trial to deliver a shame lecture to Jews. I will reflect on your moral standing next Yom Kippur. You can be sure. What about a Jew who might vote for him twice? What is that?
Shame! 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 Shame!
I'm glad they brought this bit back. It's a good bit. It's a good bit. Classic bit. Great Jon Stewart bit, you know? And yeah, good to see part 2.
Shame! Jewish person! Shame!
First of all, guys, American Jews are Americans. We do not have dual loyalties or citizenship. There's nothing for us to be ashamed of.
That's not what Donald Trump says. Donald Trump says you should be ashamed! Shame! 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 So you should have been a doctor.
It's making me very uncomfortable.
Why?
So,
Donald Trump is just saying that there's good Jews and there's bad Jews, and we need to start identifying the bad Jews.
Yes. Yeah, when you put it like that, it does really sound like Donald Trump is saying some pretty extreme things, you know? And he has quoted fucking Hitler before in the past. He's quoted Hitler a couple times. He even tried to do a whole kind of like, when he says it, it hits different, you know? I heard Hitler, he said that. Very bad, very bad. When I say it, it's different. Okay, it's different. Completely different. Yeah. The blood of our nation, tainted by immigrants.
I don't like where this is going.
Shame!
Right.
Shame! Shame on you!
Shonda?
Yeah, I'm Jewish too.
What? I did not know that.
Yeah, on my mother's side. And so it's shame!
Oh, shame! Shame! All right, get out of here! Everybody go!
Shame!
My God! Go! As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted. Oh, for God's sake.
Shame on you! Shame!
I know.
See, it's a great bit for a number of reasons, but one of my favorites is that it makes John break. And you love to see when people break, even if a sketch isn't doing well or isn't even a good sketch. And this one's good, by the way. When people break, it's lovely because it humanizes them. All of a sudden, you're like, oh yeah, you're a real person who will also laugh at silly things when presented with them on live television.
So, Ronnie, we already did the Israel shame bit, and
No, I was talking about Death to Smoochie. I spent $10 on that movie. Shame. Shame on you.
It's a good movie.
So, are you not ashamed?
No, I'm not. Listen, here's $10. Just go.
Thank you. This makes up for Israel.
All right.
Oh, it's so good to have John back. You know, he's still got it. All right, we're gonna be talking about the guillotines very shortly. I do want to see one other story that I saw David talking about. Have we already watched the Shredder one? Yeah. Okay, hold on. But that was good. Yeah, I know. It is good to have him back. Fantastic. All right, let me just play this for 2 seconds. We're going to move on to the guillotine. Oh, no, this is it. This is what I want to say. Oh, no, this is from a year ago? Okay, never mind. Let's just the algorithm feeding me things. Shame on you, algorithm, for feeding me things.
As the situation in Gaza continues to get worse, there is now video of right-wing Israeli activists attacking an aid truck that was being sent to deliver aid and food to starving people in Gaza, many of which, of course, are women and children. Now, before I get to the clip here, Gaza is experiencing a full-blown famine. That's according to the World Food Program. Quote, what I can explain to you is that there is famine, full-blown famine in the north, and it's moving its way south. And that's from Cindy McCain, the World Food Program Executive Director. This in a time when Israel is directly flouting world court orders. So what these activists that are doing in the video that I'll get to, they're just right in line with the actual policy of the Israeli government. Israel is completely violating the International Court of Justice's legally binding orders by obstructing entry of life-saving aid and services into Gaza. So Israeli authorities are closing several crossings, blocking the aid from entering, and only a small portion of the limited aid has been reaching northern Gaza, where things are dire. Here is the first video I'm going to show you. This is from Barak Ravid. He is a journalist for Axios, writing here, right-wing activists today blocked the aid trucks to Gaza.
Yeah, war crimes. Archik, thank you so much for subscribing with the Prime. Appreciate it. Welcome to the stream. New sub, everyone be cozy. Faye Molly,
I find this incredibly hard to watch because you are witnessing just the absolute depravity that some people are able to bring themselves to. Imagine destroying aid that is being sent to help starving people. Imagine thinking you're doing a noble thing here. It is just, I have witnessed, whether it's from propaganda, whether it's from governments, whether it's from politicians, media, just the lowest of the low over the past 6 months. It has been both depressing and incredibly infuriating to see how fucking disgusting some people are. And their reasoning for this, by the way, I'm going to get to it in a bit because I want to discuss that part a bit more. But their reasoning is completely absurd. Before I get there, I want to get to Bernie Sanders here. He's discussing the situation going on in Gaza.
Any objective observer knows Israel has broken international law. It has broken American law. And in my view, Israel should not be receiving another nickel in U.S. military aid. We're talking about 60% of the housing in Gaza having been destroyed. The civilian infrastructure, that's water, that is raw sewage now running out into the streets, no electricity. You are talking about a systematic destruction of the healthcare system there. Every university in Gaza has been bombed. And right now, most frighteningly, according to the humanitarian organizations, we are looking at the likelihood of hundreds of thousands of children facing starvation. The Foreign Assistance Act is very, very clear. 6201, the provision. Any entity, any state, any country that blocks U.S. humanitarian aid is in violation of law and should not continue to receive military aid from the United States. That is precisely what Israel has done.
Yet, Israel continues to receive aid from the U.S. government. I'm going to get to another clip here and then discuss their reasoning for doing this. So here is another video.
תראו, חבר'ה פה, לא מפחדים, בחורות, בחורים, איזה יופי, אוכלים את המשאיות של החמאס, מקסימה, איזה יופי.
Laughing as they're destroying this aid being sent to starving people.
Super fucked up.
But this noble group, this is what they, oh, sorry, before I get to what their reasoning is. Here's another example of protesters blocking delivery of aid to Gaza. So this is from February. As I said, there are many examples of.
Go support David and the Rational National to get more Rational National-like coverage in your Rational National eardrums and such. I want to quickly talk about a story that's a little bit happier than that one before moving on to some other stuff. And that is, of course, this new phenomenon called the digital guillotine. And at first, when I heard about this, I was excited because people are getting creative, all right? There's people doing all kinds of disruptive protests, everything from direct action, yes, trying to block, the shipments of military weapons to be used to drop on babies' faces in Palestine. Good job there. Students protesting, doing peaceful protests in camps, trying to get their schools to divest from the military-industrial complex and start having classes and exchange programs with Israeli universities until the point that they are no longer an apartheid state. These are great programs, and some universities have agreed to the terms. There have been some successes so far, and there have been also BDS successes as well, which is also fantastic news and exciting. So that's been great. And this was a new idea that someone thought of, because for people who are sitting at home who have social medias, even if you have a very small account, even if you only have like a couple of followers, it doesn't matter. You're still a social media user and consumer. I know that because you're listening to my voice right now. So I know you're consuming literally right now just by watching the stream or watching a YouTube video. If this is on YouTube's or whatever it is, you're consuming digital social media in some form. And as a result of that, they thought, what can we do? How do we go after celebrities who have been completely silent? Because yes, there has been people who have been completely silent, not just, by the way, the celebrities you know and love, the singers, the actors, all those kind of people, but content creators, YouTubers. There's been a lot of people, even dare I say, in BreadTube, some huge names that have not been making videos on the topic. You can give a big shout out to Sean, obviously probably one of the biggest content creators who's done an entire full video recently on Palestine, as well as some more news, who have put out a lot of great content on the genocide in Palestine. But there are other large content creators who have done nothing and remain completely silent. And I mean, being completely silent during a genocide, especially when your government may be one of the key funders for it, is honestly at this point getting kind of legitimately fucked. Genuinely. again, you know, you've heard the saying, silence is violence, all that kind of stuff. I understand it could be taxing or exhausting to want to consistently be able to name every cause on a daily basis, to be like, hey, by the way, I don't know if you've mentioned, you know, what's going on in Syria today, but if you haven't, shame on you. Hey, I don't know if you mentioned what's going on in Afghanistan, you know, the flooding that's taking place there and the Taliban rule, but if you haven't, shame on you. Darfur, yeah, I mean, there's some pretty horrifying ethnic cleansing taking place there, but you haven't mentioned it. The Democratic people of the Republic of Congo haven't urged you to say anything. You haven't made any posts. You're not really talking about that one there, right? How about all the mining excavation done by Canadian mining companies in South and Central America? Pretty fucked up what they do. Places like Bolivia. Don't hear you saying anything about that, though. You don't talk about that. Right, fair. It's fair. There's a lot of